it decides to.
Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Deason. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Taya Master, Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And we're also joined by Joy the cat, who's trying to figure out whether or not he wants some attention. He was thinking about earlier, and now he's clamoring for some, but he realizes that the podcast has just started, so maybe we can just kind of put him off for about an hour or so. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
But Anne-Marie, we're going to have a little fun today because we have a psychiatrist joining us today who is in many ways non-typical psychiatric, and that should lead to all kinds of interesting sidelines and rabbit holes and conversational tidbits and so forth. So I don't know about you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that sounds a good one. It sounds right up our tree. Let's hear more.
It really does, doesn't it? Yeah, it's going to be good. So let's bring him in. So we got Dr. Fred Moss, who, as I said, is a psychiatrist, although his is somewhat of a, shall we say, non-traditional path to psychiatry. Didn't exactly graduate the first time around or the second time around. Been through a few rocks and valleys and challenges along the way, but that just makes it all fun. So we're going to find out what his story is all about. So Dr. Fred, welcome. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation very much.
It's going to be a lot of fun, I'm sure. So give us a little bit about your background, how you ended up being where you are today. I saw in your profile that you never intended to be a psychiatrist, so that's got to be part of the story. You got to tell that.
Well, not necessarily. I don't know that it's true that I never intended. Here's the thing. I came to this world as a healer. That was the whole point. I arrived in this family. I had a 10-year-old brother and a 14-year-old brother. And from what I understand, there was a fair amount of chaos, disarray, and conflict in my family. And little Freddie was called in to actually heal that family, actually bring some unity, some love, and some peace and joy to a family that was really having a great deal of conflict between the three adults or four adults. And so I did a pretty good job, apparently, for a few years. I was a bundle of joy. I was curious. I was interested. I was easy to play with, and a lot of things that I really brought a new light into the family. And I would say that my healing days started right then, and that's when I learned, really, without question, that communication was really at the heart of all healing. And I don't think I learned it in such a way that I would have been able to say that at the time.
Probably not at
but
3.
I knew that it was true. I knew it was true. I knew that when I rolled around and was fun and easy, I could make a room fun and easy. When I was crying or whining, I could make a room cry and whine or have to deal with me. And I really learned that communication is what, is the straw that stirs the drink of what human connection is, and that human connection is at the heart of all healing. So as I moved through life, I was like, well, I want to learn how to communicate like the big dudes do, like my brothers and parents do. And I figured that would happen in school. And, like where else would that happen? So I started off in elementary school. I was very precocious. I was very talkative. After all, I'd had a lot of lessons at home, and I knew a lot of things that my peers didn't know. And I talked a lot. And there's no elementary school teacher who ever forgot having Fred as a student. I'm pretty positive about that. And I was, because I was so smart, or so-called smart, school came easy to me. I was kind of like a pain in the neck to my teachers, but also the gift to the teachers. In some ways, I was like, there was a lot of focus on what Fred had to say. I fought back. I challenged authority. And it wasn't always met with open arms. And, what ended up happening is I realized early on that school wasn't going to be where open discourse was encouraged. In fact, anytime I spoke my mind, I was told to sit down, be quiet, and watch the teacher, and then do whatever he or she said to do, and do it as much like her as possible.
Of course.
That would get me into the next grade. That's the last thing from open discourse. So it's like, okay, maybe that's because I'm small, and I'm never really small, but maybe it's because maybe they teach this later on in school, junior high.
Good theory, though. Good theory.
It was a good theory, and I hung in there till junior high, hoping that it would get better. It only got worse, and then I hung in there till high school, hoping that it would get better, and clearly it only got worse. And where I was learning how to communicate was outside of school. And that was really important to me. I had my bicycle, and I had, I was an adventure warrior. I did a lot of hitchhiking in high school. I was all over the place. Wow. I went wherever I wanted to go. I went where I shouldn't go. I was told, don't cross this line. And I was, cross that line that same afternoon in most cases, because I really just wanted to learn how the world worked. I really just wanted to learn, well, if there's people out there that I'm not supposed to learn about or not supposed to speak, let's find out what it is about them that I wasn't supposed to learn.
So you were like the clean cut version of Robin Williams approaching the line saying, here's the line, woohoo, let's go past the line as fast as possible.
Yeah, I think in some ways I was, and I'm not sure that I was so clean cut either, just to be honest, but I think that there was a lot of pushing and a lot of edginess, a lot of like just learning, what is this whole thing about? How can I make sense of it all? So once I realized that conventional education, at least through high school, wasn't going to be the source of open conversation, I figured, well, one last chance. We have college. And, because they had really cool helmets and they were only 40 miles away, I decided to go to the University of Michigan. And so I went there and lasted for about a year and a half. I was in the engineering school for a while. I didn't even know what an engineer was. Just my math scores got me into Ann Arbor, and that was good enough. So, and then after a year and a half, I decided to leave. It wasn't working out for me. It clearly wasn't a source of communication. And I really, really knew that communication is going to be what makes this world work for me. Okay. So it wasn't happening in school, and I left. I got on a bus, and I took that bus all the way to Berkeley, California. From Detroit, and had all my stuff with me, and had a lot of adventures on that bus ride and a lot of adventures in California, and it really did have a summer where I learned a lot about who I was communicating. And then my brothers and my parents were like, well, there's this new industry out there, we think you have the aptitude for it, maybe you should think about going in. And it's like, okay, what's it called? And you might have heard of it. It was actually called computers. And it was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's see how this works. I do have the aptitude. And so let's see what that looks like. And there was only one computer in all of Michigan. So back to Michigan I went, and I took the bus all the way back. And now I'm a computer geek and hanging out in the computer room, a 2-acre facility where the only computer in Ann Arbor was. And I was punching cards and batch jobs and stuff like that. And it was like, no, dude, I'm not doing this the rest of my life either. And so that came on to the second Dropout, the one you've already referred to. And when I left that time, I was like, you know what? I'm never going back to school again. This is just nonsense. And I told my family I'm not going back to school ever again. My mom was okay with that and told me that, I had to get a job or whatever. And it was like, okay, let's get a job. And so got an application for a state hospital for adolescent boys, a state mental hospital for adolescent boys. And it was starting, within a few weeks. And believe it or not, indeed, as I look at the date, it was starting exactly to the date 46 years ago. January 5th, 1980 was my seniority date. That was my seniority date for that job. And so 46 years ago. And I thought I would last exactly 3 weeks because that's how long orientation was. And I figured I could hang in there, get 3 full-time paychecks and buy myself a Volkswagen and drive around the country and figure out what my life was about. That's
like a plan.
What I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And on the 4th week, which wasn't January 5th, it was the 26th, I got called up to a friend of mine. His name is Paul, who later became a good friend, encouraged me to go up to the floors even after orientation. So that Monday I went up to the floors and, sure enough, I've been in the psychiatric field or in the mental health field for these 46 years, pretty solidly since then. I had a really nice time working with these kids. These kids were only 4 or 5 years younger than me. And I realized that all I had to do was treat them like humans. All I really had to do is realize there's nothing wrong with them. All I really had to do is realize they're just living life like I am. And I could live, just be lateral with them and relate to them as humans. And rather than me having some super skill that I'm supposed to give them or some sort of power gradient that doesn't really hold up in any kind of real positive way. But the thing I really disliked about that job was psychiatry. I just couldn't stand psychiatry. I really hated all the psychiatrists that were working there. It wasn't the people that I hated. It was, I could see the direction that psychiatry was headed. There was a whole lot of constraints and restraints, physical and chemical that we were utilizing. If Jimmy and Johnny got into a fight, some sort of tiff or something. We'd call the psychiatrist. He'd come down and talk to Jimmy and Johnny for like 4 seconds. Then he'd talk to us for like 7 more seconds. And then he'd go into the nursing station and write some stuff in a chart. And we'd have to go retrieve Jimmy or Johnny and hold them down in the quiet room floor and pack them full of some injectable sedative cocktail that would put them into a stupor for about a day. And if that was the case, then we would call that success. Now, let's make this very clear. This wasn't in the past. This has happened already this morning hundreds of times in our country. Let's make that very clear. It's already happened. It's already happened hundreds of times in this country today. So it's not like it's old news. It's like really what's still going on. I found that to be just, hideous and barbaric, and figured that I needed to go into the field. My brother was already a psychiatrist, about 14-year-old brother, 14 years older than me. So I knew that there was a pathway that I could take to actually go in and bring communication, be like the agent or the ambassador for communication as being a source of healing. And unlike I think most people, I picked this job because I couldn't stand it. And that's really how it went. And I went back to school for a third time, this time with a full conviction to get this thing done and to finish my undergraduate degree and then apply to medical school and go to medical school in Chicago, Illinois, at Northwestern University. And then I learned a lot in the streets of Chicago. I learned a whole lot in the streets of Chicago. Really loved the Chicago streets. I didn't learn very much in med school, by the way. I learned some bullshit in medical school that was supposed to somehow give me some extra credit to be available as a psychiatrist. But they never told me how to communicate with people and what's so important about anything else that I would have learned.
I'm glad you did get something out of your Chicago education, though. That's a good thing.
The Chicago education was awesome. I happened to arrive in 1984. There was a number 23 that arrived in Chicago at that time as well. And I had season tickets all 4 years of my medical school. So I got to watch his rookie year, and I got to watch him all 4 of those years, and became a big fan. So Chicago had many things going on, including Jordan. But and then before too long, I was expelled or graduated, whatever you want to call it, from the school scene. And given the sunken costs that were there, it was time for me to be a psychiatrist. But psychiatry had shifted significantly by that point, as I predicted. And, Prozac was actually introduced to the world while I was in medical school. And that totally changed everything inside of mental health. The impact that Prozac had on mental health is understated, and it's really underestimated. Prozac is the drug that created this whole idea of chemical imbalance that we all think it might be so. It isn't so at all. But the Prozac, the whole dream of that it's all just a chemical imbalance when you're unhappy, was initiated and introduced when Prozac was introduced to the world.
Wait a minute. I need to interrupt you for a second there, because this is a very, very important point.
Yeah.
The idea of a chemical imbalance.
Yeah, it doesn't hold any water.
When we think of the medical sciences, and psychiatry is generally grouped with the medical sciences, one of the things that advocates, well, sort of, but then again, I would say the same thing about the other medical sciences, but we could go down that rabbit hole too. But my point is that when we think about medical sciences, we think about how medical science constantly reinforces for us that they have study after study that demonstrates that there are these conclusions they draw. It demonstrates that there's
no study like that for psychiatry.
Now that's a fascinating thing.
That's true.
I mean, this is like a major thing being pushed, and there's no actual study to back it.
No, there's no elegant studies at all. There's no reliable studies. There's nothing that suggests that sadness comes from a chemical imbalance or a chemical imbalance, or that anxiety or psychosis is a chemical imbalance. Not at all. So it's a response to the human condition.
The question ultimately gets raised up. I mean, we can blame the drug company, and I'm sure they played a role, but where within psychiatric circles did the idea come from?
The idea comes from the idea. Exactly. It comes from how much money that can be made and what can be look, if we can call it a chemical imbalance, then we start making humanity very simple. The idea that humanity is just like an automobile that needs to have an oil change and might have an imbalance on the tires or something like that. And that we can treat us like mechanics rather than realizing that what's here is a human connection. Human connection does not follow the rules of mechanics at all. No, human connection is when you listen to somebody, when you're with somebody, when you connect with somebody, when you harmonize, when your frequency and you resonate with somebody else. That's when human connection takes place. And upon that experience, we all know that massive healing takes place at that moment. 1 second, please.
And while you're touching on that subject and while you're taking a moment there, I just
Yeah.
wanted to reinforce this is one more example of how science, medical science in general, and in this case, particularly psychiatric medical science, but this is true for almost all the medical sciences. It's astonishing how often medical science, which claims to be study based, which claims to be empirically based, is not actually empirically based. I mean, this is like a continuous pattern that plays out over and over again. Now, psychiatry perhaps is a little bit more overt about it than some of the others are, but this is an astonishing thing that we don't seem to be coming to grips with.
Well, it's only astonishing that it's astonishing. It's not really astonishing. It's only astonishing that one would be astonished by it. It's not, it's just the way it is. And so, look, if we really start looking at it, we start seeing that psychiatry isn't a medical field. Exactly. Psychiatry is a space. I mean, it's certainly designed. It's not inherently a medical field. Let's put it that way. There's not like a subspecialty called the mind that thereby, we're basically learned that if we're uncomfortable, that means there's something wrong with us. That is not the case at all. If we're uncomfortable, we are dealing with humanity. I don't think there's been a moment in time, I'm pretty positive about this, I've never read anybody who wrote about it, where discomfort and misery wasn't an inherent part of what it means to be human. And you can go as far back as you want. And there's no space, although we all dream and think that maybe if we're uncomfortable, that means that we have some sort of something wrong with us, because then we can relinquish responsibility for the clumsiness of what it means to be human. When we realize that, when we start thinking that, oh, that's not me, that's my ADD. That's not me, that I'm on the spectrum. That's not me, I have anxiety disorder. That's not me, I got bipolar disorder. That doesn't mean not me. My mom had schizophrenia and I got traits of it. Whatever people say about how they can relinquish responsibility for the dear and real clumsiness of what it means to be human. And the discomfort that what it means to be human is also a big part of what it means to be human. We all know that. We all literally actually know that. We know that what we want more than anything is someone to understand us, someone to get us, someone to connect with us. That's what we want. That's what we're seeking. In fact, that's why we're sitting on this podcast right now. You're hoping and I'm hoping that we have a connection here that can move some sort of proverbial ball forward. And that's what we're here to do. More than anything else, way more than anything else, as a matter of fact. I mean, that's where love emanates from. That's where purpose emanates from. That's where vision emanates from. That's where contribution emanates from. These are all high-powered things that us humans are very connected to, or interested in most cases. And we start realizing that it all shifted when we created the idea of a chemical imbalance, or we created the idea of biological psychiatry. This idea that somehow if I give you a drug, I can upend some sort of bizarre chemical imbalance that caused you to be uncomfortable in the first place. Now, here's
well, I got a question for you, though. Yeah. I mean, I like what you're saying. Don't get me wrong. But did it actually start there? And the reason I asked that question is the idea of blaming something outside of ourselves has been around for a long time. Now, It is really big today. Today, this is like one of the major things going on around the world. But it's been around for a long time, long before psychiatry came along as a field.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I'm wondering. The roots didn't start at that moment, but it got spread right here to psychiatry to such a way that, we don't blame a log for burning in a fire, right? I mean, that's what a log does when it faces a fire. We
praise it more often than not. Yeah,
we do actually blame ourselves for being uncomfortable in a world that is completely out of sorts. It is no sign of mental health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society, as Krishnamurti said. It is no sign of mental health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And it isn't a sign of mental health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And we have come to believe that it is. That when we're sad, when we're anxious, when we're afraid, when we're distracted, when we're feeling awkward, when we're feeling hopeless, when we have thoughts that are uncomfortable, when our memories get in our way, when our dreams get thwarted, when we have trouble sleeping, we think there's something wrong with us. We really want to believe that. And what that allows for is a relinquishment of the responsibility of embracing and accounting for all of what it means to be a human. And that includes things that are highly and completely uncomfortable. It's very highly, and as we kind of touched on in our introduction before the show, I know it takes something to walk through this world. It takes something. It's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of obstacles and a lot of hurdles. And if we just want to be honest with ourselves, when we can find somebody to actually relate to us experiencing that, or when we can provide that for somebody, instantaneous healing takes place at that second without side effects, without the need for doctor authorization, without any kind of insurance company stepping in the way, without even special skills from the other person who absolutely didn't have to go to medical school in order to be that person. It is not a requirement to go into conventional education in order to learn how to be a person who can provide comfort for another person when they're feeling mentally imbalanced. It just isn't.
But isn't it also true though that we can become addicted to this behavior of wanting to share our stuff with other people who aren't necessarily doctors? And it doesn't really matter whether they're doctors or not. We become addicted to it. We want to just keep telling that story over and over and over again, endlessly.
I think most people don't really have access to their honest to goodness core value and true self. You know, and this actually goes back to, so people talk, they spit noise all day long for sure. They write it on social media or they take some video or do whatever they do. But that I don't have it that's their genuine self most of the time, or not really accessing what's into core values of their humanity. You know, the truth is, the one thing I know about these 8 billion people who are walking the face of the earth, at least with a fair amount of certainty, is that most, if not all of them, are human. I do know that. And that's,
you didn't have to do a study to find that out, which is really cool. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we really can get each other. There's a frequency when we move the stuff out of the way that's in the way of us knowing our true self. When we take the mud off, we take the rust off, we take the dust off, we take the yuck off, and actually get down to discovering that which has been with us the whole time and start resonating. You know, how do we know we're resonating? Because you're just saying what's so without stuttering. You're not trying to remember what should I say in this situation? Like, what's being called for? What am I being asked to say? We learned back in first grade, you know, that I've already referenced. Miss Monroe was my first grade teacher. And, you know, we learned how to become somebody that we're not in order to protect the person that we are. This is an absurd discovery that we all got taught. We all got taught how to be someone that, Fred, sit down and be quiet. Your discovery and your questions are not welcome. It's like, okay, I guess what I'm supposed to do right here is sit in a chair and watch you on that blackboard and learn how to make a cursive A and a cursive B. And if I can do all that, then you'll pass me to second grade as if I'm a better human. Well, I'm not smarter or better at that point. I'm not even heard. I'm now disconnected. And the crack in the cement got larger and larger over time. And we never took the time to go back and fix it. So many of us are actually saying and being someone who we're not in order to protect the person that we are. It doesn't work. It's a ludicrous, preposterous, completely absurd way of managing life. And it's reached the point where for most of us, for many of us, we not only don't talk when we know we should or do talk when we know we shouldn't, we often are saying things that even we don't believe. Now, when you start looking at the absurdity of that I've actually been pushed far enough to say out loud things I don't believe, it's just ridiculous that's how we've gotten to. So what do we have to do? We have to like tone it back and move the things out of the way that are in the way of getting in touch with our core values and our core self. What's really going on? Who is his true voice? That's the name of one of my books, by the way, is called Find Your True Voice. And then that's what I do is I help people through a systematic way, move the things out of the way that are in the way of you knowing who you really are. We don't have to go out there to find out who you really are. Who you are has been with you the whole time. You're that person. It just move that stuff out of the way. And the other book I have is about creativity. You know, creativity, it's called The Creative 8, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression. And what I really realize, again, is that when I'm able to speak my truth, when I'm able to represent my truth through art, through music, through dancing, through singing, through drama, cooking, writing, gardening, those are the creative 8. I am capable of then being with other people, and the symptoms that I thought I had, the discomfort that I thought I had, often disappears or certainly diminishes significantly as I'm in the act of carrying on these creative expressive techniques, whether they be the visual arts or the performing arts or whatever. So we start realizing over and over again that nothing is anywhere near as powerful as connecting to another person. And when we want to be healed, that's when it happens. And that's what we sometimes call love, as a matter of fact. You know, we actually connect with somebody in such a profound way that we say, oh, this must be love because I connect with you and you connect with me. And therefore, let's live the rest of our life together or something. And, you know, this is just something that has been unwaveringly true. So one of the interesting aspects of the thing you were calling astonishing is that there's nothing astonishing about what I'm saying.
Well, there's nothing astonishing on the surface of it, but let me go into that a little bit.
Sure.
Because the thing that I find to be astonishing about it isn't so much what you're saying, it's how what you're saying is not generally accepted societally. And I can give you a number of examples, but I can think of one off the top of my head that comes really quickly. Somebody I was seeing recently, and that person essentially had a lot of the same kinds of experiences you were talking about. You know, she had things in her background where, you know,
Sure.
parental influences and so forth that had all kinds of narcissism attached and all that kind of stuff.
I guess so.
But the bottom line was, when it came down to being who she wanted to be in her heart, she literally said this to me at one point. She said, the person in my heart is a fake persona. It's not the real me. And I thought to myself, wow, boy, there's a great expression of the opposite of what you're talking about, the opposite of being connected to who you really are, because she was basically denying who she really was by saying that's a fake person.
Well, I think there is a person in her heart that maybe she doesn't have access to. And so, yeah, we're all asked to be fake people. We all show up with a certain persona. We are all inauthentic in our core and real selves. And, you know, taking that adventure back to finding out who we really are and expressing ourselves from there does really take some courage. You have to have something. You know, not everybody is going to be able to do that. Some people are going to declare that they're artificial or inauthentic and just walk through life as if that's the case. It's not the case at all. I mean, we can, with a fair amount of, with a fair amount of effort, one can relate to her or him, whoever that was. It sounds like it was a she. And that one can relate to that person and give them access to being resonated with. And once that happens, a new level of discovery actually takes place. You know, I've worked in some of the more difficult places in the world. I've worked in maximum security prisons and in nursing homes and in way too many inpatient units. And one of the things that I've learned over that time is that when I connect with another person, that is when the explosions of health takes place instantaneously. And it doesn't have to wait. It's not 6 weeks later, let's see what your titer is inside of your blood. It's nothing like that. It's like in the process of actually getting someone, healing takes place at a very high level. Now, whether or not this is understood as being, by societal norms or something, I think the answer is it really is understood. It's just not what's published out there. The idea is that when you're feeling uncomfortable, ultimately you're just going to label yourself with something, like you already kind of used the word narcissism. It's like, we don't even know what narcissism, none of us even know. It's basically a synonym for asshole these days. When you call somebody a narcissist, you're basically saying, I have an asshole for a friend or a wife. It's not, that's basically the clinical definition of narcissism is a covert asshole. That's how that really is. But we use that word as if we think we understand it.
Oh, yeah.
We actually think, oh, yeah, I have a narcissist for a husband. Oh, I'm sorry, your husband's an asshole. That's really how that works. It's like, and that's the way all these definitions of psychiatric diagnoses were made. This idea that depression comes down and gets you. This idea that anxiety is just an event, is an experience for which there is no escape. Once you have it for life, and you have to deal with it forever. That's all freaking nonsense. Every piece of that is nonsense. And we actually can alter the way that we see the world from wherever we are. Each and every one of us has a future in front of us that is not defined by the paths that brought us to here. That is just a fact again. It is not defined by the paths that got us to here. We have an opportunity to say, do, and be someone different than we've been up until now every single moment of the day. We have that opportunity. It doesn't mean that we have to do it. We can keep doing the same old junk and say that we're entrapped in continuing to do the same old junk. That sometimes works because, again, one thing it allows me to relinquish responsibility for the stuff in my life that I'm not doing very well. And I can just, there's some sort of really illusion of familiarity, of the comfort of familiarity, as if that's the way it is. And also, there's another piece to this, which is, psychiatrists, mental health providers, and really clinicians of all types, as you kind of referred to, get a lot of power when I can declare there's something wrong with. I'm equipped to declare there's something wrong with you.
Oh, yeah.
You just gave me a license to declare there's something wrong with you because I don't like you, or because you're outside the bounds, or because you said something that is supposed to rings a bell and some sort of trigger of some sort of diagnostic decision making. Maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Shocking.
Well, there's a shocking concept right there. I mean,
that's shocking, right?
Yeah.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
Like it might be really true that there's nothing wrong with you. That's nothing wrong with him.
I want to interrupt for a second here because I want to get Anne-Marie's take on this, because Anne-Marie has a double advantage that you probably don't know about. Not only is she a co-host, she's formerly a listener. So I think of her as being like a representative of the listening audience. So Anne-Marie, when you're listening to this, like, how much of this, first of all, is blowing your mind, and how much of this is making you say yes? I'm kind of. And how much is actually making you say no? That's crazy.
Well, I literally have just been going through, agree. Oh my God, I agree. It's I just think we're here for a human experience, and we just try and make life perfect. And life isn't perfect. If life was perfect, it'd be so boring. But we have to feel these emotions. We have to go through these things, and we are programmed as children to change our behaviors and change our thoughts. And then we seem to spend most of our adult life trying to be a child and go back to that innocence and that authenticness. But
raw purity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think I was listening to something yesterday. It was actually on quite the same lines about not being spiritual, not being a Christian, not being religious, not being a wife, not being a mother, just being a human, and what that means and what does that entail, and just take on board everything that you're supposed to have as a human. And this is it, warts and all, and come into peace with that. And that's not a bad thing, because you're here for all these emotions and you're here for all these experiences, and they can be as beautiful or as grotty as you want them to be. And I just think one of my sort of New Year's resolutions was actually to speak my mind more and not to say what I think other people want to say. And actually what I'm already finding a few days in is actually it becomes a bit more uncomfortable to say things that other people want to hear, not what you want to say. So this is all resonating massively with me. I'm loving it.
I love it. So there's some feedback for you, Dr. Fred.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah, good stuff. So, all right. So first of all, I love this path that you've been on. I mean, this one resonates with me on about.
It hasn't been that fun. There've been points of it that have been very difficult, of course. And
of course, yeah.
And it isn't like I was flying in the face of my industry. Initially, what I really was, although I was certainly hired instantaneously to be a diagnostician and a psychopharmacologist, because that's what they wanted from me by the time I came out of residency. And so I sort of had to live duplicitously by, in fact, serving those goals and getting that done much against my better judgment in many cases. So that level of duplicity caused a lot of pain, a lot of suffering inside of me. Sure. But around 2006, we started doing some things because I had enough of lying to myself and everybody else, and decided that I would take a big handful of my outpatients. I had a couple thousand outpatients at the time, and I took a big handful of them off their medicine with their consent. And sure enough, they got better, way better, like profoundly better, reliably better. Of course they did. As a matter of fact, that's because the medicines actually induce, increase, perpetuate, or cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat. Now, this is what I learned. That's what they do. Now, this is a really cool business model. It's a very great business model, as a matter of fact. It's no problem. If you can create a product that actually causes the need to buy the product, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's an incredible product, which will likely create billions of dollars per day in profit margin if they run out for a while. And sure enough, this is one of the few industries in the world that has billions of dollars per day in profit margin every single day without question. So it at least does that. Now, I'm not mad at the industry. I'm really not. I'm not mad at the industry. I'm not mad at doctors. I'm not mad at insurance companies. I'm not mad at anybody. Why? Because there's nothing wrong with them. I wish I would have created that darn business. What a great business. What a great model. Here's
very successful.
If you're going to drive, it's like blaming rat poison. It's like you don't blame rat poison for killing rats. It's just what rat poisons do. It's just it. So what I really want you to get is what's really here is the opportunity to see that the only place when I first learned this in 2006, I wanted to go to the screaming at the top of the mountaintops and just tell everybody, it's quit medicating all of our kids, quit medicating each other, quit deciding that medications are working, quit diagnosing it, quit doing all this nonsense. But violence doesn't really sell in that process. And so I had a problem just screaming it I had to like water it down or wash it down and get it to the point where it was presentable, which I now say I'm close to doing. And the way that I got there was, this idea that really like looking where in the cycle can we enter this system and make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
The only place to enter the system and make a difference is by telling people that there's nothing wrong with them. Because when there's something wrong with you, what do? There's only one thing to do. You go to a freaking doctor. That's what you do. You go to a doctor. Mm-hmm. But if you could get, by the way, there's nothing wrong with you. Like this discomfort you're having doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. That's a function of life. Then if you can get that there's nothing wrong with you, then you don't have to go in and find out how to fix yourself. You don't have to carry on a diagnosis, which will never come off your record, no matter how hard anyone tries, which you will get on your first visit, whether you like it or not, because no doctor can bill for you without giving you a diagnosis. And that will stay in your record forever. And even a doctor later can't remove a diagnosis you got on your first visit. So it's here to stay. But if we really get that we don't have to know that there's something wrong with us, if we can just get that what we're really looking for is assistance and communication and connection, that's really what we're looking for. It really is. It does not necessarily move you forward. In fact, I would make a very strong case that it moves you backwards to take on a diagnosis and then get medicated for the idea that it's supposed to do that which it's marketed to do. These drugs don't do what they're marketed to do. Let's make that very clear. But the fact that I eat them isn't the drug's fault.
No.
It's not the industry who created the drug's fault.
Yeah, somebody has to actually physically pick the pill up and put it in their mouth.
I have to first go there and say, do you have something I have to first believe that there's something there for me. Then I got to go there. Then I get to some dude who spent 4 years at some medical school somewhere who's going to like write down some stuff. And then I got to pick that piece of paper up or electronic, whatever, get myself to a pharmacy, get myself 30 days of this stuff, make sure to take it. There's people who will never, ever, ever miss a dose of their medicine. They would rather leave their kid at school than miss a dose of medicine.
Oh, yeah.
And they line up every morning in the pharmacies and make sure, even though they're getting worse, and they may get the impression that they're not getting worse. They may even be the last ones to know that they're getting worse. And let's make a real quick disclaimer for the group in here. There is a group of your listeners who no doubt believe that they have a diagnosis and that they have the perfect clinician and they have the perfect, the perfect treatment plan, and they even take the perfect medications and they wouldn't trade it for the world. And what I have to say to that group, I certainly know these people, they show up every so often. It's good for you. Like, more power to you. Absolutely, man. If that's where you've reached anywhere in your life where you wouldn't even consider an upgrade if it was offered to you, like, hang on, dude, that's pretty good. Like, that is, I don't know a lot of people that reach that area anywhere in life. And if you've reached that area with respect to your mental health, please keep doing that. This isn't conversation for you. This is conversation for the hundreds of millions of people who don't feel like you feel, who feel like they've been mistreated, misdiagnosed, mismedicated, undermedicated, overmedicated, whatever. Those people are like, man, this system sucks. And I'm getting worse and the world's getting worse. And I don't like this. And what can I do differently? That's what this conversation is for. And so when we really start looking at this, we start seeing that what we really need more than anything is a recognition that humanity and the human condition has multiple facets to it, including many different things that are completely unspeakably uncomfortable. I get it. It's intolerable at times to be a human being. I am not diminishing the pain and suffering of the people who declare themselves to be diagnosed. I'm only saying it's not a diagnosis. I got you. I got it, man. It's rough being a human. It just doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you when it's rough. That's all. And that's all I'm asking people to absorb. When we get that, there's a tremendous amount of freedom, a tremendous amount of peace, a tremendous amount of promise and possibility that gets created. we start realizing that we, who are the authors of how we see our lives, can author our life in any direction.
Mhm.
We can continue to say that there's something wrong with us. No, honey, the reason I yelled at you, it's not about me. It's because my bipolar kicked in. Yo, bullshit, dude. How about that? It is about you. And here's the other problem. These medicines actually cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat. Let's get that clear. Let's make that clear. If I gave you these medicines before you thought you had the diagnosis, you would soon have the diagnosis that that medicine is marketed to treat, because it actually is affecting the chemical imbalance. It's creating its own chemical imbalance. We're counting on it to do that. We're just hoping that it's counter to the one you thought you had when you came in. It just isn't.
It's really wild. I mean, because if any other industry, if any other field of endeavor tried to sell a product like that, they'd be charged with fraud. But if you do that in the psychiatry field,
psychiatry a fraud, sir.
Well, I'm not asking you to. I'm just simply saying, if you do that in the field of psychiatry, you get exactly the opposite treatment.
Psychiatry is a fraud, as it turns out.
Okay, well, fair enough. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
Psychiatry is a fraud.
But I do want to ask you something, though.
Psychiatry is not designed to make people better. It's definitely not designed to heal. It's designed to create a perpetual patient.
Boy, that's a great message. Yeah. But there is something I want to follow up on, though, because you touched on it earlier, and I think it's really the most important piece of the whole puzzle. You talked about the importance of communication and connection, which is something we talk about here all the time. Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that. Let's dive into that a little bit and talk about not only how does that work, but how to actually bring it into your life more than you have if you're having challenges that have led you to medications.
Well, once you're medicated, the idea that you're going to be able to find your true and honest self while medicated gets obscured. So these medicines actually block the pathway of you getting there to find who is really sitting at the underneath it all, because it does, in fact, alter your chemical balance. So number one, how do you really do that? You first have to get that that's what you've been looking for in the first place. And you can kind of get that there's people in your life that you're already counting on, more than likely, friends, family, colleagues, etc., who kind of get you. Then we have to find your own true voice. When you find your own true voice, it's natural. All of a sudden, you get closer and closer to your own human frequency, and you naturally, almost like tuning forks, resonate with other humans who have found their core self. And in that possibility, that's when the unification takes place. That's when we all start being human, living as one, as a human culture, as a human entity. So, and it feels good. I mean, as we heard earlier, this idea that it actually takes something to lie. It actually takes something to pretend to be somebody that you're not. There's a lot of work. You got to remember who you said what to. You got to remember when you said that to whichever person you said it to, or didn't say that in front of it. There's so much work. When in fact, when we get down to the core values, it's actually so much easier. There's the truth, and then there's everything else. It's not like the truth is one of the choices. The truth isn't one of the choices. The truth is the truth. Then everything else is one of the choices. But when we start really seeing that love is what makes this whole thing work, that connection is what makes this whole thing work on this planet, and we can stand up true and honest for what that really means, then we start seeing that it's way easier, way more beneficial, way more satisfying, way more complete, way more effective, way more efficient, way more beautiful to actually be our true selves and connect with another human being theirs.
So then that leads to the very obvious question. Okay, sounds like a good idea. How do I get there?
Yeah. I think the way to get there is to stop pretending that being anything else but your true self is your true self. So the idea first is you got to get to, oh yeah, you're inauthentic. Oh yeah, you're pretending to be somebody that you're not in order to protect the person that you are. And when you're ready to start releasing that, that's when you start letting go on these things, and maybe start small, incremental changes with your inner circle, where you start speaking your honest truth to them about things that you've never told them before. Maybe you tell somebody, that you love them, or maybe you tell somebody that you stole $5 from them 10 years ago. It doesn't matter what you're telling them, but when you come to grips with honestly taking on to thine own self, the actual truth, you have the possibility at that point of stepping into the beauty of what it means to resonate. You start really looking at what's preventing me from being honest, real, and true with the people I'm with or with myself. And let's start picking at that a little bit and start realizing that it's not doing the protection that it's promising to do anyways. As a ludicrous, preposterous, absurd practice, it doesn't even work. You're still going to be thrown off the island just for being somebody different than you thought you were.
I love that last line.
Yeah.
You're going to be thrown off the island for it.
You still are. That's what you think you're preventing, but you're not preventing that at all.
Yeah, people think that they're watching reality TV shows. They're living reality TV shows. I mean, seriously, Anne-Marie. I mean, you're giving me the eyebrow, but right, isn't that what people do? They basically live their own reality TV show.
Yeah,
and we tend to do that to make ourselves feel better about our own lives because we don't want to face what's actually really going on.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Now that is the challenge, though, because there is the pain to be dealt with when you deal with what's actually going on. I think that's one of the reasons why we get into a blame culture, because it's easier to blame.
Well, maybe.
And do you think
also like it's easier, but it's not necessarily easier?
Do you think also people are looking for a quick fix? Because I know after I had my last child, I did a few kind of sticky events happened, and I got real anxiety. But I went to the self-development side, and it takes a long time to actually kind of fix your mindset and know your value. So do you think some people are just like, I don't want to feel this, just sedate me, just give me
that would be great if it worked. If it worked, I would be all about it.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
If there was a quick fix, I'd be on the side of the street selling it every day. No problem. I'm really into quick fixes. It sounds great. However, it doesn't really work. It's a Band-Aid with a razor blade embedded in it.
I agree.
It's not even a Band-Aid. If it was a Band-Aid, I could actually sell it. But it's a Band-Aid with a razor blade embedded in it, and I have trouble with that.
Yes.
See, when you put your Band-Aid over a cut and it has a razor blade embedded in it, it will work for just about a minute. And then the blood will start oozing out the side of the Band-Aids. And you, as the clinician, as the doctor, as the one who's taking care of this cut, only have 3 choices. And those choices are to add, increase, or change. That's it. So I could add another Band-Aid. I could increase the size of the original Band-Aid, or I could change to a different kind of razor blade embedded Band-Aid. I could do that.
Well, there's a fourth option, though, isn't there?
The fourth option is not taught to us. It's not taught to any of us.
Oh, we're not allowed to even consider that.
Not at all.
Oh, okay.
We would then have to assume the treatment was making you worse, and it's not.
That would be self-defeating, right?
It does not work to do that. We sometimes call things side effects as if there's an effect. But the truth is, there's no effect. This is all effects. And if we start really looking at this, no one has the gumption. No doctor has been taught to think when you come back worse on the second visit, we're supposed to remove the treatment. That's like a pathway to malpractice.
This is true. Yeah.
Especially when they can give you more medication to do the side effects of the medication that you're
taking. You think it's side effects, but it's not side effects. They're intended effects.
Yes.
Let's like make that very clear. We call it side effects, which kind of gives glory to the notion that there's a primary effect. The primary effect is to create a perpetual client who gets worse. That's how things go. Let's just face it. Is the world getting mentally healthier? Just the fact that 1-something billion people are taking psychiatric drugs? Is the world getting mentally healthier? I didn't notice. I might have missed that day.
We could say the same thing about medical science in general. I mean, medical science is now pharma-driven in every single way. There are, hundreds of millions of people, billions of people on medications every single day throughout the year, 365 days out of the year. And yet heart disease is up, cancer is up, chronic conditions are up. Virtually everything is failing. And yet we're staying with the medications. And at some point, you kind of hope that some doctor's going to say, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense.
Why, doctor? This is a person's job. It's not the doctor's job to take care of how you think of the world.
Great point. Great point.
Very good point.
Yeah.
You're right.
It is not. Don't wait on a doctor to do that.
Great point. Yeah. Which means take responsibility for your own health.
Something closer to that. I'm down with that. Exactly.
Well, that's radical. You can't do that. That's not the way society works. But that is the root of it, taking responsibility for and not just taking responsibility for your health, it's taking responsibility for everything about yourself.
Everything about you, including the fact that life can be freaking crazy miserable. It's okay.
And an interesting thing about that, you can even change the way that feels depending on how you decide to look at it and to deal with it. Yeah,
it's true.
Which is also kind of shocking. First time that got presented to me, I remember what my reaction was. My first reaction was, huh? That can't be the way reality works. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute. Maybe it does. And then that basically changed the whole field of conversation as far as I'm concerned. But going back to the whole idea of communication and connection, because I really do want to hone in on this. I think it's really, really important. It isn't just that connection and communication are how you basically reconnect to yourself, which, by the way, is vitally important. But there's also the value of the connection itself, the connection to the others. I mean, you get both benefits out of it. You benefit in that you're helping yourself to focus on taking responsibility for yourself, and you're getting the added benefit of the energetic connection you're getting with somebody else. And to me, that's the part that kind of gets swept under the rug. I don't know what you're
thinking. Healing is not something that some person gives to another. Healing takes place with both people. Healing takes place in all directions. Healing is what causes it. Healing is not the healer and the healed. Healing is a lateral experience. Healing is not one with a power gradient of the provider and the receiver.
Yeah.
Healing is something that happens inside the human condition. Healing happens through connection. Connection itself is not a unilateral thing.
Yeah, it's not just bidirectional, it's multi-directional.
Yeah, it's right. It's just present.
Yeah. And it's amazing. It's a powerful thing. When we learn to connect into it and to trust it, it's amazing what comes out of it. Truly amazing. I mean, all barriers get blown aside.
Yeah, it's there's nothing that's ever been designed inside the last 100 years of modern day psychiatry that even rivals it even a tiny bit.
Do you think there's any chance? I mean, I realize this is kind of a remote thing, but do you think there's any chance that modern psychology and modern psychiatry ever gets to this?
I don't know.
That's not exactly an endorsement.
I don't know. You know, there's a lot of counter influences, including just momentum and you know, common, we'll call it prevailing beliefs. You know, global prevailing beliefs, and to undo those is going to take. People, it's hard enough, patient after patient. A patient comes in and tells me that they've been taking this medicine and it makes them better. And in the meantime, they're shaking and they can't work and they're, up all night or whatever. And they say they're better and they don't want to consider an alternative. It's like, okay, is that person going to learn that if they would stop doing all that, they could actually get in touch with themselves and be courageous enough and,
well, there is a prevailing theory, not prevailing. There is a theory that prevails on this show. Let's put it this way. There's a theory on this show that if you go deep enough and dark enough into your darkest space, you're finally going to reach what for you is a bottom point where you decide to make a shift.
Yeah, I think so. That I guess you didn't design that theory yourself, and it's a theory. A lot of people before you have made that claim.
It has been talked about quite a bit here, so yeah, I get that.
and it is important if you can just hang in there and embrace the entire shebang of what it means to be a human. That's when you finally have taken control of your life. When you can become very uncomfortable or very comfortable or comfortable enough with being highly uncomfortable about the aspects of your life that frankly aren't working at all in the way that you wished. When you can start looking at that, this is when you step into what it really means to be a responsible human being.
Which is a very powerful thing. This is fascinating. This has been a really good conversation.
Thank you.
A couple of things we like to do. We have like a number of things that we do at the end of every show, and I want to make sure we do them here. First and foremost, for somebody who wants to learn more about your stuff, find your books, learn about, maybe even contact you, how do they find out about you? Tell people how to find you.
Yeah, so I can be found all over the internet, and you don't have a hard time. Just plug my name in with anything, and you'll see me. But I think my website is really organized it pretty well. That's drfred360.com.
Okay.
And from there, you get access to not only discovery calls with me, all sorts of freebies, all the podcasts. I have my 300 podcasts as a guest and 300 as a host as well. You get access to all of them. You get access to some of my publications and my access to my books in PDF form, or I think they're selling, both of them selling for free these days. And you can connect with me. And then the other place is sort of the mothership of my websites is something called welcometohumanity.net. And now after this discussion, you can see how it got that name. And it's been that name for about 7 or 8 years. And I totally appreciate welcometohumanity.net. That's my brand name. And then I troll around, unfortunately, a little bit too much time on Facebook. And I don't like it there at all, but that is a place that you can DM me. And another place that I do like a little bit more than Facebook, although not so much either, is LinkedIn. And that's another place that you can find me. And then there's this other website that we talked about briefly, which is called the Undoctor Reset. And if you go to undoctorreset.com, you can learn what it's like to become an undoctor. And what does an undoctor do? An undoctor helps people come off their diagnosis, undiagnose, unmedicate, and then undoctrinate themselves so that they no longer have to choose to go into a conventional psychiatric field when they're feeling uncomfortable. Now, it isn't just a matter of deterring them from a psychiatric field. It's telling them and showing them how, in fact, just being a great listening human being who is caring and interested and curious, how those things can be remarkably healing for everybody involved. And this is a very profound and free and easy and doable. You literally do not need to have dropped out of college twice. You do not need to have gone to medical school. In fact, those things probably get in the way of you being the kind of human that you really can be. And in that process, you start realizing what it means to help others or what it means to help yourself by coming to grips with what is really so, not what you have been trained to think is so.
I love it. Second thing I like to do is I like to go to Anne-Marie because, like I said, she's a former listener in addition to being a co-host. And just to ask you, Anne-Marie, how are you tying together today's conversation?
I think you and I picked up on exactly the same thing, because the most beautiful sentence was communication and human connection is the heart of all healing. I just thought, because that's what we hear all the time about human connection. And I also loved the accountability. Again, it's another theme in our shows, having that accountability for our own lives. But what I would just sum up with is, if you're somebody who's still struggling after many years of medication, then is it worth considering the alternative?
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And then the final thing I always like to sum up with is a kind of a reminder that because of this era that we live in, and Dr. Fred, you're doing not just this podcast and your podcast, I'm sure you do other podcasts, you're putting out all kinds of stuff on the various social media channels that you posted on, you wrote your books and so forth. In the process of putting all this stuff out and helping people, you're helping people that in many cases you never meet, you never see, you don't really know what happens when you're doing it. And you don't get much credit for it. I mean, that happens to all of us. So I like to take a moment to say, Dr. Fred, on behalf of those people you've been helping, who you never met, and you never seen, you never will meet, you never will see, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thanks for making that clear. I really warms my heart. Thank you for connecting.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.